cranking Labatt. Unbelievable.
That's right.
I
Oh,
love
nothing
that.
but
Yeah,
the
where
best.
I used to do work for a company out of Montreal or Toronto, I think it was. We go right by the Molson,
Yeah.
and something about that moment, I was just like, Canadian beer, colder. Like, yes, cold Canadians makes sense. This is
That's unbelievable. Look, let me tell you, I stayed within like visual distance from the Molson Brewery. I stayed down at the end of like Rue St. Catherine, like down at the very end.
yeah, I think that's exactly where I was. I'm thinking that
So
sounds.
yeah, it was amazing. I went up there for a couple of bachelor parties. Cheers, man. We all need it. We all need it. Cheers.
Should we clink on the recording? Are you recording? What's going on here?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, we are recording.
We're
Oh,
recording.
okay. Cheers then.
Boom.
Cheers. Rolling recording. And there's nothing like seeing the Molson sort of factory just raging in the background. We had this amazing row house, and our fridge, we filled it with nothing but Labatt Blues all day. It was just crushed it for like 5 days there. It was crazy.
That's
One of the
great.
greatest weeks of my life. So, but listen, welcome, Keith. This is how we do it. Usually,
This is the rolling start.
this is the rolling start. We ain't stopping now because every single one of them has been like this. So, but I want to introduce you properly to all the listeners and viewers. Mr.
Keith, who are you? What do you do?
Mr. Keith Gooberman. Tell us, who are you?
Thank you for having me, guys. Really a fan. Listen to a bunch of these myself. Yeah, Keith Goodman. I've been working in this ad tech thing for checking the date on the clock there. 14 and a half years, I think.
Oh man.
I've done a bunch of stuff in this ad tech world, but launched my own practice, independent trade desk, 2014, programmatic
Before
mechanics.
it was cool.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Is it cool? Is it cool? And then I launched out of that. We spun up a second company out of that called Pontiac Intelligence, which is a DSP Lite built on top of Xander App Nexus. So been doing this a while, but thank you for having me. Big fan of the pod,
Oh,
Eric,
thanks.
and Ryan. So.
Thanks.
Thanks
Can I brag a little bit about your background for you? And I think
That's
okay.
right.
Here we go.
I'm gonna
Do
get
it.
the scotch.
Yeah, listen, we're super pumped. You're helping us kick off a series with a lot of buyers, buy side tech.
First on the buy side.
Yeah. We only bring the smartest folks and folks who've been around and see things from a lot of different angles. You've had a rich history working with publishers as a publisher in media. You made a transition to tech and buy tech and being a buyer. So great experience at Condé, great experience at Mode or Glam, amazing experience at Varick, right? And then saying, hey, I know how to do this, right? And great companies, great experience, but you saw a
I don't know what just happened there, but
Good freeze of all the freezes.
yeah, at least he got through most of it.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I'll take it from there. Oh, Eric, are you back? No. Okay, we're just gonna keep rolling and see if we get him back. Otherwise, we'll pause.
All good. Yeah, I mean
He basically said so you saw an opening, or you saw. I mean, you. It sounds like you were traditionally on the sell side for a very long time, and then saw.
Well, yeah. So I started my career at a major publishing house like Condé Nast as they launched Condé Net Digital, right? So started with like big corporate style. How do we sell banner ads and make money? And then followed a bunch of people from there to Glam, which was like a women's, Condé, very women's fashion focused. Went to an ad network, women's fashion focused. I was just a nerd ad ops guy, right? Doing revenue calcs and trafficking, and went to Glam. And at Glam, got to see how ad networks worked. Okay. So like you say, publishers are sell side. Ad networks have both sides of the house usually. They have the supply side publisher facing team and the buyer facing team. And I got to see how that whole orchestration worked. And I was like, man, this exchange thing is the publishers are selling inventory. The Condes sell it at 10, right? And they're selling it through these ad networks at 5. But and the exchanges, they're getting the $5 ads on the exchanges, these new exchanges, 2009, 10. It's only costing these buyers $1. But when I would look at the buyer, I'd be like, the buyer's not an agency. The buyer is a company called Rocket Fuel or Criteo or one of these other companies. So I was like, why are we selling this at $1 and then selling it to this guy? Who are these guys? Right? I was very young. I was like, who are these people? And then those guys are selling it, and how much are they selling it for? I was like, they're selling it for the same amount? I'm so confused. Like, how does that work? So from that, like, well, I want to be involved with the people who buy it for $1 and sell it for $5, right? That sounds like, I like that. That's how I got involved. I then went to the trading desk side and started to I worked at Varick, which was MDC's trading desk arm. And that was kind of like a agency style competitor to the Rocket Fuels and the Criteos and all that. We were part of a holding company, but still kind of doing the same stuff, using technology to buy ads, reselling them at a higher price. So I got to see how that worked. So publisher, ad network, agency. So once I had kind of, this is how the whole system is working, and there's holes in it and problems and, all types of problems. That was kind of when I was like, I'm going to just do this myself and start my own company.
And now I want to bring us to present time, which, by the way, Eric says he's going to be back. It's just a fun little computer issue. So let me bring you to present time then. And I'm just going to skip the preamble. Like, what do you see happening now? Like, in the past 18 months, we've second price auctions, they're gone. We now have this weird, so many different paths for one DSP to get. You have the trade desk who is like trying to manually force this. You have a sort of focus on SPO. Questionable is if everyone understands what that means. My man.
Wow, that was terrible.
But so what are you seeing now? Like what is the buy? Like, let me ask it a better way. How am I getting screwed as a publisher? There's always a new way. What's the way right now?
You know what it is now is that the buyers have a scale problem in the way that, and when I say buyer, okay, so my company, we service, because we've built this technology platform that allows people to sign up with a credit card, this Pontiac thing, we see the smallest buyers of programmatic that exist. Like, I'm very confident I have some of the people I would consider the smallest buyer, right? Like a chicken place in Houston called Ray J's. I noticed that they set up a campaign. They only advertise in 2 zip codes. And because
That's
it's a
awesome.
chicken place, it's like on the side of the road in Houston.
Way to go, Ray J's.
Yeah, so
Ray J's.
Yeah, go Ray J's. And then all the way up, dealerships, insurance agents, to small businesses, through mid-sized businesses, through franchises, and through programmatic mechanics, we do Fortune 500 companies directly, where with like years of me, working my tail off to try to earn a seat at the table and then win some of these abilities to manage programmatic for big guys. And what is interesting is that if it's, no matter who it is, they want to reach a very specific audience. If it's Ray J's, they want to reach people that could walk over to the chicken place or drive, right? If it's a major advertiser, they may have an obsession over people that are decision makers that can have over 200,000 in investable assets. Like, they get into these pools where like they also have a scale problem where they want to spend a ton of money to reach a very small number of people. So all of this ends up 40, 50 years ago, okay? This happened where TV was able to just keep driving the price up. Literally in television, they were just like, now it costs more. Now it costs more. You want more? You want more targeting? You want more fun? Now it's even more. Upfronts, and it costs more. More upfronts, more parties, more martinis, and it costs more. And it's because you couldn't get the TV ads from anybody else. And they couldn't make up fake TV ads. They could only give you real TV ads. But these DSPs and these exchanges that are not as reputable as others and that type of thing. Oh, hold on one second.
Nice.
And we're back.
Kid walked in. My naked kid almost got on the podcast.
Hey, pull up a chair.
Everybody's welcome. So the phenomenon that I find the most offensive to publishers today is that in a DSP, I can say, give me $50,000 worth of ads for this audience. And if I'm not an experienced buyer, I'll just pick, data from this company and this company. And then I'll go into my inventory selection and I'll just say all of it. And the people that do that are doing publishers a giant disservice, because guess what? They ain't all real ads. And it's another system of fraud, but it's driven by weak middlemen often. Not, again, I think my company does a very good job on this, but kind of like, if the buyer isn't clear as day that we can't just buy any website, we have to buy a curated list of quality publishers that sell real ads, until you have somebody step in, because the advertiser says they want that, but then they also demanding that you reach these people that make $300,000 a year. Who the hell, how many people, like, what are you talking about? So that problem ends up falling into where some buyer at some quasi network or whatever it is, at an agency, trading desk, somebody who just clicks a button, people that make a lot of money, any exchange, and it runs on not quality stuff. And I'm not saying I'm not trying to pick on publishers who go after the long tail of volume. It's just stuff that if you know what you're doing, it's either not real or it's all mobile garbage or whatever it is. The advertiser wants good ads and they're getting sold a combination of audiences and others and fraud, and the money's not going to the publishers. So the publishers don't get that phenomenon that happened in TV where the price could keep going up. Publishers keep saying the price barely goes up. Everybody's at home on their computer and the price is kind of doubled. The price should have quadrupled. So
I mean, Google's pointing out to the Senate that prices going down are a good sign. So no, this makes me think of, there's a comedian out there that does a joke around how the cranberry sales guys got to chill. Like, cranberry managed to get cran apple. You got all of this. And it feels like the same sort of thing has happened with data. This notion that the trust is in the targeting is infallible. And that's why I can just target the rest of the world, because I'm hitting exactly this thing where it feels like publishers have done a really terrible job of marketing there's good and bad, and that there's good and bad data too. Actually, it's mostly bad. Almost all the types of data that you're going to turn on that you don't have a signal yourself are going to be, it's tough. And the hard part is, at least as far as I can tell, it doesn't hurt anyone on the tech side, DSP, ad exchange, or whatever, to have buyers believe that, because you can charge a little bit extra CPM. You get to charge. I mean, the trade desk is the only reason you're doing that take rate that the trade desk keeps increasing somehow every single time is because buyers are relying on not just audience, but your black box audience or your black box attribution. But it feels like that's what it feels like. That actually is how it feels like I'm being screwed. It is really, if you open up a DSP and you put in a buy for an audience and you open it to every exchange, your list of top delivery, okay, is not going to be what you thought the internet was. It's not going to be the sites you thought. The premium newspapers call them down the middle, right? Like those guys. Tiny delivery. And it's not because they don't get giant readership. It's because these quiz websites or street filters of slideshows, they serve so many ads, so many more. I have a good relationship with Augustine Fu, who's a fabulous fraud researcher, very outspoken, and he's very smart. And he is right. There is a lot of fraud, but even ignoring the fraud, ignoring that whole problem, there's still a bunch of low quality stuff that if you just push the data button and you tell the DSP to spend a budget, it does a lot of its spending on these sites where it can get it very cheap, can get a lot of ads on there. Okay. And you're right on one thing. Everybody wanted to move that money. Okay. The buyer wants to spend the budget. The agency wants to make their commission. The demand side platform wants to make their VIG. Sell side wants to make their VIG. Publishers, the good ones, don't know how much is out there because they can't see what's going on.
And the bad ones who know the game are tricking it to serve 27 ads on a slideshow. It's a that's got to get cleaned up. When that gets cleaned up, and there's actually only ads to buy from very quality places that you can make deals with, I believe it starts to positively impact the publishers. In my heart of hearts, that's how supply demand works. But they keep manufacturing ads that are cheap, and I just had to go through a list of available third-party data segments. I just had to go through a list myself. You ready? 285,000. That's how many I have to go through. Like, what are we talking about here? That's so absurd.
That's I think this every time. If anyone here works in DFP, just go into DFP and search C-suite. Tell me how many different things come up. Search HHI 100K plus. How many of those come up? It's nuts, and there's no way there are that many people that have deterministic data on that stuff.
So let me ask you this: should that be the target, right? Like, should those be the layers that you want?
Well,
Philosophical question, right?
Yeah, well, yes. And to follow that philosophical question, like, do you even actually, you being buyer, like, do you actually really know your audience that well? I'm sure some do, but like, do you? Like, is it? Yeah.
No.
Like, I always, and this is going to make me an old timer because I never really did online dating, but like my problem with online dating is always this presumption that I know what I want, when like all evidence to the contrary. So like, it feels like the very same thing is just happening on the advertising side, which is like thinking you know what your audience is. And it's never just like adults 25 to 54 who make over 100K. It's like who are adventure enthusiasts who crave an edge, who blah, blah, like there are all these aspirational things added on top of, which bizarrely you can find third-party segments for. I have no idea how that works. It feels like we've deluded ourselves into thinking, buyers have deluded themselves into thinking they know exactly who their buyer is. They can pinpoint them, and that their data is pure enough to show them that.
Yeah, well, you're definitely right that there's this like but you know how many consultants and media people that have worked in this a long time? And remember, the audience definition stuff from Nielsen, legacy, radio, and TV, and then through the aughts and kind of like the online, Google, pretty good at this, Facebook, relatively good at this, okay? They know who people are, because people just tell Facebook that they like to read a certain author. They're going to know a decent amount about you, but you told that they know that. So a lot of these marketers also come to programmatic with kind of this, a bit newer than old school, but still oldish, but I don't know how that works exactly. But they come to it with like, oh, I know that our audience, it turns out a lot of motorcyclists like our product. And it's like, well, you sell a toothbrush, so that seems like a little bit strange, but I guess that could be an angle that you discovered. But I don't know if that angle is going to work on programmatic. And I'll tell you, let me give you my 3-minute spiel on why third-party data is broken, feels like fundamentally, just because it seems like it fits here. Companies start, these data companies, so they realize through cookies that they can cookie all types of sites and find out all types of detail of the users that come through there and segment them. Okay, so this is as remarketing and third-party data. This is getting going 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They're starting to realize what they can do. Big cookie footprints. Okay, so let's take one of these companies that started out in the data DMP space, okay? They already raised $50 million, $100 million. They're already in debt. It's a venture play, venture money behind it. They're down $100 million, okay? So if you're down $100 million, you better build yourself a scalable business. You can't just build a business that makes $1 million a year and be like, we did it, right? It's like, no, sir. We're going to need a bigger business than
Good point.
It's like $100 million of our dollars. Okay, hold on. I'm working on it. So let's say one of these companies, these early DMPs, okay? They go to all the car websites. So they go to KBB, Edmunds, and Cars. And they say, hey, I got a proposal for you. I'm going to put a pixel on your site. We're going to collect data of who looks at a Mercedes S-Class. We're going to turn around. We're going to sell the data BMW and Mercedes. We're all going to share the money. Everybody goes home happy. The car websites are like, yes, what a great idea. No more ads. I love it. Pixels all day. Let's go. They then do this, okay? They get all the pixels down. And they get an audience together of people that have looked at the Mercedes-Benz in the last 3 weeks on all these major car retailers, okay? And they package the audience. And then they go to BMW and they get their agency to buy against this audience, okay? They do it. They do the whole thing. The agency says, yes, sounds interesting. Let me test $25,000 against this, okay? I'll put $25,000 into the media buy. I'll pay you $3,000 for the data. Okay. So they run the campaign. It's the best performing campaign that BMW has ever run on display ads ever. It's unbelievable. It's the greatest thing they've ever seen. They're like, this is amazing. They're like, hey, we did $25,000 last month. Let's do $250,000 this month. And the data guy, salesman, you know these people, right? He's like, oh my God, yes, like turn it up. So he goes back to the ad ops department. Okay, the ad ops, you know, these are the people like us who are sitting there looking at the numbers. And they're like, I got BMW. They want every person who's looked at a Mercedes, give them all 3 million cookies so they can move this buy. And the data guy sits there and he's like, no, 47,000, bro. Only 47,000 people look at Mercedes. He's like, no, I need 3 million. I need 3 million. They're not going to be able to spend more. You ready for the punchline? They're not going to be able to spend more than $2,000 with us a month if we only have 47,000. And the data guy goes, I can't make up people who like Mercedes. You said you wanted people who like Mercedes. And what do you think happened in that room? You think that they ended up serving 3 million cookies that included anybody that's ever looked at a car and other people that they could find that fit the description so they could sell it through to the client? Or you think they held true to word and only gave them the audience?
Well, you know, the media types, they're a scrupulous bunch. So
well, that's the joke.
They sold 500K the next month. Let's be real.
The joke is that the CEO who raised 100 million was like, I can't make enough money back if we don't dilute these audiences. I can't make this work if we don't dilute the audiences. And that discovery, my friend, there's your reason why all the audiences are worthless. I get it. Listen, people look at cars. You know how many people are in the audio and tender audience in most of these things? 144 million cookies. I'll tell you, it's a big business. It ain't that big of a business.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, God, there's so many directions I can take that. But yes, so like, but here's the problem. And this, a fantastic subtweet I saw recently was talking about this guy, but they didn't mention him by name, but I just ruined this person's thing. So Brian O'Kelly gave this talk to us. Or a group I was with, and he talks about how like the biggest problem for publishers is that we all look the same in a DSP. And so data has done well in which I can search in audience, boom, C-suite, boom, I get a list. I don't even know if it's like, is it low to me? Is it Experian? Is it MasterCard? Is it whatever? But I can't do the same thing for publishers. And I definitely, if I'm suddenly like careful about who is in that list, like it's just, if I got a list of all the publishers on a DSP, it's not 280,000. Like it's a ridiculous number. If also because like there's just whole mapping things against, you know, AMP and then www versus not like, anyways. So there's probably like 3 million, and I'm way underestimating here. But like, so how do we do it? Because to me, that's the only way this changes is if in the system that a buyer is spending money on, I look different than garbage. I'm going to use Dipley because they're the one that I always hit over the head. I'm better like that. I'm not Dipley. How do I make it clear to a buyer that when they check a box, they're checking, I want the good stuff. I don't want that, you know, the premium versus reach or whatever it is. Like how do we get there?
You know, everybody in our entire business is so obsessed with the browsers breaking these cookies. Okay, with Google Chrome getting rid of the cookie. And man, what a tremendous amount of havoc that is going to wreak.
I want to talk about that in a minute because I know you have a good post. You have a good post on that, and I want to explore that. But keep going.
Yeah. And it's unbelievable amount of havoc. But there's one thing that's getting kind of interesting here, which is like the only people that are going to be able to give you any type of data that sounds like it's even worth a damn. And again, you know, checking my. I don't know who's listening to this. Hopefully everybody. And this data is questionable. In the first place.
Definitely Google,
like,
maybe the FBI.
Yeah, the joke is like, if the publishers are actually being honest, remember, the TV thing I said. They want to pay more. The buyers don't mind paying more. The middlemen want to pay less. That's how they make money. Oh, surprise. Okay. The buyers don't really care. You give me my audience and you show me it's real and it works. Okay. That's good. That's in the marketer's world. That's pretty good. So the truth is that through this, you know, if Google goes through with it, which Jeff Green keeps saying he doesn't think they're going to go through with it, which I think is I like his aggressive attitude of like, no, it's not. No, they're not going to do it. But if they go through with it, you got to switch a lot of your buying to PMPs to do it really well. And if you got to switch your buying to PMPs, now we're shopping. Now I'm shopping for a PMP. I got to do an extra step, not just hit and shoot people, but I got to talk to some of these publishers. There's a chance for publishers to start showing their value. And then I've seen, in my experience, I've seen some instances of PMPs where a client is so happy with the PMP and the performance, they say things that I haven't heard in this business since we talked about traditional media, where they'll be like, I will pay more for that, get me more. I'm like, oh, like what a great email to write. Be like, hey, can you give me more delivery, keep the frequency low, CPM, do whatever you want. And they're like, yeah, okay, it costs more. That's how this should work. And here's the value. So I've actually seen that happen. Not many times. Don't get your hopes up. Very rare. But I have now seen. I saw it 0 times in 18. I saw it 2 or 3 times this year. So I do think that we're starting to make a little bit of progress on this very difficult. But you're right. You nailed it on the head. It looks the same. I mean, Bach is.
But let's talk about, let's expand it a little bit, because this is where a lot of our audience loves that our perspective, right, is Ryan spent a lot of time talking about, you know, there's all these other sites that have a different sort of value associated with them, right? And this is why we love like the way you talk, because you get to work with a lot of different clients, right? So you get to work with like Fortune 500 through one company, and you have another company that's like, hey, maybe that's not the right place for Raised Chicken to be, or someone else. By the way, shouts to Raised Chicken, nothing wrong with it, love it. But
Ray J's, baby.
Ray J's, yeah.
Ray J's.
Next time you're in Houston.
So having worked with a lot of different types of advertisers, let's talk a little bit about when you do want to work with the mid and the long tail, right? Because it's really hard for someone to say there's less value there when there's actual, you know, visits, there's actual time on site, there's a lot of pages consumed, and it's whatever it is, there's a value associated with it, right? How do you work with advertisers and with sites like that? Because it is 2 million plus sites on the web, right? So outside of a great core group of high premium sites, the user goes where they want to go, right? So talk to us a little bit about how it is to work with a client that does find success or failures and a lot of learnings with sites that aren't necessarily in maybe your top 100.
Well, yeah, I mean, discovery, you know, audience discovery is an overused term, and one that, again, we talked about the data thing and it's kind of wacky. But like publisher discovery is a real art. There's an art to it. And like, we encourage our clients to get into the weeds, right? We always come back to what we're doing, right? We're like, whoa. You kept talking about AI and like audio. I don't know what you're talking about. We're buying ads on websites. Like, do you know the websites they're running on? Stop talking to me about
great,
AI.
Keith, by the way. I think that's great, but like encourage your audience or your clients to get into the weeds.
Yeah,
get into the weeds, right?
Are you aware? Because you can also imagine me selling. Yeah, you can imagine me selling to a buyer too. Is like, oh, I have a trading, you know, I have a lot of times my team will be like, where are you running your ads? Like, first, great. Oh, you have the best AI in the world working for you? That's what look. Where are the ads running, sir, ma'am? Where are the ads that you're serving running? And they'll be like, oh yeah, I got an app list, site list. And we'll be like, in-app. I mean, how much, do you know what in-app ads are worth? Have you done much of this before? So like a lot of times I'm a salesman, you know, surprise. So like, that's kind of a lead question. It's like, where are your ads running? Is a way to be like, I don't know. I'll be like, well, you should know. That would be a good thing to know. Or, oh, I'm using this this fraud detection and this and this. So a lot of times, you know, my team and some summer interns and some of the people on my team that are doing kind of entry level stuff, I'll get on them to make custom site lists for people. And they go about doing this by using the old magic Google engine and finding websites that talk about concrete. Find me a concrete list and give me, not like a concrete list, like a good one, but one literally about concrete. And they'll kind of go through it, and we'll do a lot of discovery on our own. And You could do it through GDN often, just because Google, a lot of clients will have GDN where they've run it before. So they'll be like, oh, I've had success on concretedaily.com. And we'll be like, oh, we'll find you 20 like Concrete Daily, and then we'll serve it on that and go from there. So the sad truth right now, and I do think this is changing a little bit, but the truth is that you gotta go do some work to get the publisher discovery stuff to really work, and to build a custom site list and to do that work. And if there's publishers out there really trying to build an audience and a niche and get it up there, you know, this is how that we'll find you, right? Again, it's kind of like, we also can share a list of the 2.5 million or whatever it is websites we've served on. Serve 1 billion ads a month these days. So like, here's a list of that sites that you can be on, and we can go through kind of that. And it's that combination of things that we get really, there's no magic bullet to that, right? And that's where you can have the conversation. Hey, Yahoo/business, you know, I'm trying to think, utilities, something about concrete. Like, there's other places that we might be able to try, and like, we get into some of that nuance, but there's no magic way to do it. It takes a lot of work, right? We invest in it to have a team that goes out and does this and builds these lists and talks through it with clients, but it brings it home. And it actually starts to lead to what we were talking about before, which is a little bit of like good publisher discovery. But they'll be like, oh, like, why don't I just serve this on, you know, I'm an entertainment brand. Like, why am I not on People in TMZ? Or, you know, something silly where you're like, yes, that would be a good place to start. And they're like, oh, I'm on this quiz game and Dipley. And it's like, yeah, that's, again, maybe the right place, but there's better ways to do it. So it takes work, and it takes being kind of, again, the margin's bigger if I buy cheap stuff, always. So
I want to talk.
I'm gonna let Eric take this over in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm gonna briefly soapbox, and then that's it. No, my problem with this, my problem with this, or what I constantly struggle with, is like, in the end, if I want to do this, especially if I don't want to like screw out the quality long tail, while also showing, is you want to quantify quality, which is like damn near impossible. And the problem is, no matter what, like Dipley's entire job and their entire business is gaming metrics. That's it. Like, they're not doing anything else, but they're like, great, buyers care about viewability this month. Boom, we're going to make sure we're hitting at least 60% viewability. Oh, if we can get our click-through rates at 0.15, we get, you know, it's that. They're playing that game. So if just the next thing is we need to have our quality score at 600, they're going to figure that out. And they're going to figure it out faster than me or the New York Times or anyone who or like any niche publisher in a super specific vertical, mesothelioma. Like, they're just going to do it because I'm not focusing on upping my scores. I'm focusing on making the best marketplace possible, making the cleanest auction. Like, I'm trying to have the best quality ads and the best experience. I'm not necessarily thinking of these things. So this is like, part of me, I don't want to be defeatist and be like, fuck, I'm never going to do this. But like, this is constantly the struggle. Like, how do we do?
Well, yeah. And as fraud's going to come way down. Like, this is something that's going to, the fact that people just buy these audiences and all that stuff, again, cookies, whether or not they're done, they're definitely on. The ability to go into a thing and be like, bye, everybody, where's blue
that
shoes?
Apple, I'm not sure if you saw the Ari Paparo post on iOS 14. ITP is now going to extend not just to Safari, but to Chrome. So like, that's going to happen. That means no third-party cookies on Chrome on your iPhone, and it'll probably be in the Mac operating system coming at you soon. Like,
it's going to really it's going to bring back this, like, I can buy anything I want and I'm getting the audience I want. I think that there's the best work we do is with great publishers, right? So like, we play on the publisher side too, just in the way that like, we want great publishers to thrive and have great content. A lot of people say that, but again, then they also buy a whole bunch of crap and mark it up. So like, it's a little bit, you have to be a little bit cautious of that. But I do think generally, like, it would be better if it was a more, again, the money going through the pipes is unbelievably giant amounts of money. Billions of dollars are going through these pipes. Let's make sure that the guys who build the good stuff and the quality stuff are getting a fair piece. Not, you know, it doesn't have to be all of it. But again, I think that if I go into a DSP and I set up a buy to buy everything in whatever, New York State or whatever state, I don't care, Arizona. If I set it up to buy that, I should really know a lot of the top sites. And if they're not like something I'm like personally familiar with, when I go there, I should see that they're going to have a giant audience of a giant group of people that maybe I didn't discover, like video game things that happens to everybody where they're like, I didn't know this video game site was as giant as it is, but it is gigantic. But that's kind of the nuances. Like, I hope that that's going to help publishers like Atlantic and Times and the guys who build really pay people to build the best content they can, literally. Like, those guys, I think, are going to become a bigger part of the equation as the amount of places they can put their money starts to shrink to what's legitimate and quality. Then you have to go do some of this work. But, we'll see.
Keith,
Right.
I want you, Ryan, you brought up something really good just a second ago. And we've spent a lot of time talking to publishers about what sort of the sunsetting of, Chrome's third-party cookies, plus now evolutions of that, right? Like, we spent a lot of time talking to publishers, tech. Keith, can you give us a little bit of perspective from the buy side about like what that means, right? So we've heard a lot from other folks. Tell us kind of like your thoughts and like how you're preparing for all those things. Or, I'm going to throw in a few other sub layers in here because I think from a supply and publisher perspective, Ryan and I and a lot of others, when we're putting our heads together, it looks like a world where there's 15 options, 10 options. You know what I mean? Like this isn't like we're shrinking it down to 2 or 3 real options. There's a lot of marketing, sort of language and vendors
There's
sort of
a million
portray,
identity
right?
solutions, and they all got everyone, and they can
There's
all
a
tell you
million
walk-in
identity
traffic.
solutions, and a lot of them are predicated on actually the end user coughing up a whole lot more than a third-party cookie, right? So it's like, is it email? Is it what is it, right? So walk us through or explain to us a little bit about from the buy side, like what you're thinking about when it comes to all that.
Well, let's do macroeconomics. I'm kind of selling this macroeconomics point, but like, if there's $1 billion that's going to go through these pipes, okay, we got $1 billion, okay, there it's about to go through. Like 200, 300 million goes to just ad tech players today. Like, a tremendously giant amount goes to the data and the AI and the identity solutions and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Just giant amounts. And these people are there's a lot of people, well-paid people, smart people that are in this group. And of course, in any group, there's people that are building very honest technology that takes single-digit points and is making all the value in the world for what they've provided. But a lot of them are selling some solution that we just talked about, like a third-party data audience, which there's no way this is not diluted 90% of a bunch of randomness, right? Again, it's like, I would love to take the horseback riders that you have in South Dakota, but there's not 7 million of them. There's not even 7 million people. And it's like, how was there that many? So that's at risk. And you're seeing identity solutions. You're seeing a lot of heebie-jeebie hoopla coming out of the woodwork because they're all saying, oh, when this identity problem goes away, it's not going away. It's just getting to be more complicated. Google and Apple, they're saying very clearly, ladies and gentlemen, it's going away. Like, yes, you could fingerprint a browser, or you could try to tie it to a persistent login from a group of publishers. Not going to work. No offense, guys. And maybe there's a workaround that Google's going to release. I mean, if this goes up on the web and in 2 years it seems that I'm totally insane.
No, man, preach.
It's not going to work. It's not going to work. And you know what the punchline could be is, oh, so we're not able to reach the horseback riders anymore? And it's like, not really. Maybe in Facebook. I mean, there's places we can still reach the horseback riders, but the open web, we're not going to be able to do it. And you know what?
Can I? Oh, go ahead. Keep going.
Hopefully, you know what the punchline is? Well, where are these ads running? Right? And then it's all of a sudden like, hey, did you know the Atlantic had an entire section about equestrian last month that gets a couple thousand people? Why don't we buy some of that? And it's like, well, that seems like a pretty good idea. So like, this reckoning, it's so hard to predict what's going to happen. But you can't sell view through attribution, okay? Remarketing, all that, everybody, okay? You can't sell cookie audiences, like all the data, all the match, like, a lot of big organizations all can't, it's the same problem I said before. They can still sell something, but they can only sell 1/20th of the amount that they could sell before. So like, it's got to go back to the buyer who's going to have to step back for a second and be like, well, where can I find this audience that I would want to? And I just hope, and that's kind of what I've been saying, is that they're like, well, let's just look into what publishers have content about this. And I know it sounds insane because we've done this like 20-year cycle of jumping through these like venture.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that cycle, right? It's like
cycles
that come back
it's like,
around.
no, where is it running? It's like, oh, we can use contextual targeting, but like, that's cool. Let's try that. But let's also just call Horseback Riding Magazine, right? Why don't we even, we didn't start there, you know? And you're like, oh, like, hold on, that's not a bad idea actually. Maybe they have a PMP, and it's like, oh, boom, here we go. Now we're doing real business. What's your question?
No, well, I mean, I think Keith, you mentioned like, okay, this is where like tenure and like experience starts to kick in, really, right? Like you're working, you're operating long enough, you see that cycle come back around, right? You know what I mean? Now it's like contextual, it's a thing, right? Okay, well, we can rewind 10, 12 years ago, and that was like kind of a thing. And what I'm curious about is, what I'm curious about is the amount of discussion about like what's happening right now between any of these solutions. I feel, based on my discussions, not an intuition thing, when I speak off the record with a lot of folks that are like, buys like, yeah, we're putting on all this stuff, and when you talk to them privately, not really, right?
Yeah.
And when you look at the solution, they're like, we're killing it, blah 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 blah. Not really. So this market of transactional sort of reality is not real, right? And so
I've learned to stop trust. Anytime someone tells me their percentage growth, like
Yeah,
from what? What's your denominator?
right, it's $18. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
great job. You made
a great point. And that's what I think right now. I think only sort of to really, I don't want to scare everybody, but I want to talk real about like what's happening is, the solutions that are there, sort of both sides in the connected middle, like both sides know they have to advance towards probably a series of solutions, right? Because it's not just going to be like a switch. There's going to be a weird, ugly, sort of odd sort of combination of events that are stepping stones, right? And they're part contextual, they're part authenticated audiences, they're part email, they're part all these things. But the reality is that none of that's really happening now. So we're missing the data, we're missing the opportunities, we're missing the learnings to make something else be a bigger thing than what we've got now. So I'm curious, from your perspective, how are you being told the story, right? Because there's the supply and publisher side, which
Actually,
we very much sit on, right?
These
Yeah.
identity
How's that
people
portrayed
selling
to
you?
Exactly. That's my question.
I'm super curious about that.
Yeah, it's not nearly as prevalent on the buy side. Okay, and I think that's because the way people sell to sellers, and I've done it, it's a very different sell, right? The publishers are making money, and they think they should be making more, but they're making money. The buy side has a job to spend the money. It's a whole different view of the world. It's like literally the opposite. It's not even the opposite, because it's two different businesses, right? Like,
great point.
Why do we want to spend the money? The agency gets paid on every dollar spent. Okay, the agency wants more work, ladies and gentlemen. That's how they make money. And the CMO of the organization, they're not like, they're not the chief of operations, right? Like, let's take a large company that makes mac and cheese. Okay, they have a giant team that sources milk, a giant organization, and if they get the price of milk down 1/1000th of a penny, they make a lot of money. Okay, those people are like scientists. I mean, they're actual scientists, but the data analysts. There's teams and teams of them. The CMO, it's like, hey, spend this $200 million, see if we can get people to eat the mac and cheese. They're not quite as regimented in their study of exactly every single digit, if you catch my drift. So it changes, obviously, organization to organization. But the buyers, they're not looking to save money usually. They're not looking. I mean, they are in a smart way, but like, they really want somebody to help me make sure I'm doing this at the best of my ability. Help me make sure I'm doing this as best I can. So somebody coming in with a way to prepare yourself for the identity solution in the future, they all of a sudden walk into a conversation with the buyer that gets very awkward very quickly. It's like, well, how are you identifying these people today? It's like, well, we use, Oracle cookies that say these people like to cook. And like the identity solution guy has to be like, interesting. Do you know where that data is? How are you using that data? How's it interacting with the SSP? They're like, I don't know. I just pushed the button, said people who like to cook. So like the identity sale has to go on the technology level. Okay, so it has to go. It can't go to the buyers themselves. It's got to go to the tech players. And the tech players on the buy side, I think we're all a little bit sitting and waiting. Like, again, there's this idea that if somebody's using the platform to buy, we have Pontiac, so we have buyers that buy, and they run remarketing. Like, well, that's going to be only what, Microsoft browsers in January of 2022. So what does that mean? What's going to happen? It's like, well, they spent 3,000 last month. They're now only going to spend 300. I'm like, it's my, I'm a partner in the business. I'm like, all right, we'll deal with that when we get there, I guess. There's nothing else we can really do. There's no like, oh, let's prepare with some other identity solution. Like, to me, it's a lot more like, well, that's not good. Maybe we'll try to get them to do some other type of targeting, but we're going to have to stop doing that one probably because there's not going to be a way to do retargeting. So we don't get on the buy side nearly the number of people that sell identity solutions over there. And I would kind of say, I'm going to know a little bit more about how this is going to go before the publishers see the actual fallout, right? So cookies go, boom, off. I'm going to see remarketing campaigns dwindle. I'm going to see attribution say that I've done less sales. Okay, so now we're in January. Now we're in February. Buyers are going to start freaking. They'd be like, well, this isn't working. They'd be like, well, it's probably working just the same, actually, but we can't track it as well. But ignoring that, what do you want to do? And they're going to be like, what can we do? So then it's this discussion. We should talk about these publishers. Hey, this identity solution seems to be gaining some ground for 3.5% of the market. We can talk to them. Do you want to talk to them? There's kind of this like game, and publishers are going to have to be reactive because that's their nature. That's the sad part of the business on the receiving end of the dollar. But hopefully they get calls. I think that the salespeople are going to get calls where they're like, hey, this agency that I've been calling for 5 years, all of a sudden called us and said, can you put together a plan to do $50,000 of horseback riding? And you'd be like, what, really, what? Like, yeah, it has to go through PMP, but like.
I have to tell you, this is the most fascinating conversation I've had because up until this moment, I've considered the buy side when it comes to identity, like to an extent, you're right. Apathetic is the word I would use. Like, just like, whatever. And my thinking being that like brand buyer, just won't care and I'll just spend more on Facebook. I can't do my thing over here. I'll just spend it over here. But I never thought that I would have an ally in the DSPs because yes, you guys you need that spend still. Like there's a need for this open market spend. So there's actually kind of awkward allies. I mean, sure, the SSPs sort of, kind of, but the SSPs are just a volume thing. Like they just need the interaction between you and me to happen.
Well, they will care. They will care once remarketing comes down and all of a sudden spends dropping.
Yeah, it's just interesting because for the past 3 years, the relationship between me, publisher, and you, DSP, has actually been a bit antagonistic on my side because I've been screwing you with volume. Like your QPS has been going nuts because, like, frankly, I don't care if I plug it in another path. Then now all of a sudden you have 14 auctions versus 7. I make more money. Actually, though, we're going to come to a situation where that's going to sort of flip a bit. And like, we both need each other a bit here. And we both need to sort of get our sales pitch together in January when that remarketing budget goes from 3,000 to 300, because we got to figure out how to make this work. And we got to figure out how to make attribution something. Or like, part of me thinks like, we got to prove A, it was never good to begin with, but like also B, then we have like, cause it wasn't good. Like, I think there's going to be COVID has been a forced A/B test on what life is like, remote versus non-remote. There's going to be a forced A/B test on like, are your sales still the same with or without this? And it's going to be, some people are going to be really shocked by the fact that they're the same.
Here's where I think we could be helpful to Keith and others is, when we talk about the data, we talk about like all the things, outcomes, remarketing, we know the outcomes there are sometimes tricked. You know what I mean? Like, right. It's just like, oh, this happened, pour 4x more spend to that. Right. But it was like,
Cookie bomb at the end, get that last click because people still use last click.
And Keith has one of the greatest analogies there. I remember a thread years ago on LinkedIn where somebody was like, why do I get all of this? Why do I see these same shoes that I bought already? And he's like, you know why? Because it fucking worked. You know what I mean? By the way, we can curse on this, right?
Oh, we do that here.
Right? It worked for a second, and that's all that mattered. And buyer says, or brand says, pour 4x into that, right?
The remarketing one's a phenomenon,
right?
Because It's the best performing line item
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not about to stop serving to more users. I don't
Yeah,
care if you bought the
I'm
shoes.
sorry,
I need you to
it
stay in
worked.
my line item.
No, the
There it
hardest
is.
part of the remarketing is you don't have enough reach, because like if you could pour more money into that, it's pouring gasoline on a fire.
So why
It's-
am I pulling people out of the pool? I need every dollar I can get in that line.
But you know what I was thinking about, Keith and Ryan, the way we were just talking about this right now. What is the one thing that publishers can do when, you know, we're all relying on sort of like other folks to sort of help figure out part of the story to connect us closer, right? The reality is we sit on a fuck ton of data, okay? And what we haven't done is taken the time to comb through that data and say continuously, like, all you want is a shot. We want outcomes, but you want a shot to make it work, right? And so that ton of data that I just mentioned is, we know our buyers that have been like trying, bidding, winning, losing, not knowing where to win, right? And at the same time saying, like, we know how to shore up those relationships, right? How do you tighten it up with your top 85 buyers /50 buyers /30 buyers /10 buyers? Because we know the top 5 to 7 buyers. So if I could encourage publishers to help our buy side partners, is to tighten up that data, right? All of our buyers, all they've wanted to know is the stuff they didn't know, right? And who's gonna know that better than where that outcome occurs, right? And instead we leave it up to other folks to try to tell that story. And so that I just wanted to throw that out there, because I think in our discussion we've discovered that we can get a lot closer through simple discussions around data and getting opportunities and tries. So I'll stop there. But
I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna parlay it into to a really interesting look on the DSP world as this cookie thing goes down. Okay, so I'll take the starting point of what you said is like, how can publishers get ahead? Let's talk about how again, a publisher is always reactive. Let's get ahead. Okay, so here's my, I don't have a hat and I want another drink, but I'll put on my publisher hat, and my publisher hat says, hey, sales team, go look through the 50 top clients, okay, and figure out which DSP they spend most of the money through, okay? And then figure out what client, because it's all in the reporting, guys. Go figure out what client spends the most money, okay? What are they spending it on? It's like, it's enterprise, they spend it, they're looking for people who are gonna rent cars and travelers. It's like, okay, thank you. Go to the data science team we have, okay? There he is over there. It's just Frank. Go to Frank. Tell Frank to make you an audience of our first-party data of people that travel. And then go back and sell a PMP or guaranteed deal, go all the way to the buyer and tell them it's going to be $5,000 a month. But guess what? It's not going away on 2022. It'll be there on the day that this happens. They will still be able to buy the same segment. I don't care the size. Get them started now. Get them started on premium dollars, right? Because now you have all the answers in the world. The salesman's like, they said they could get it cheaper on the exchange. It's like, good, tell them to enjoy that until the bomb goes off. Okay?
Yeah,
And it's like,
good luck.
Oh, that doesn't work anymore. So it's like a little bit of an aggression where they can get in front of this to get some of these PMPs and these PG deals kind of lit up and ready to go. And remember, if a publisher—
Can we just call those deals, by the way? Can we just call them deals?
We can, but but part of my punchlines.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Keep going. Keep going.
So some of this is like getting ahead. Hey, what does a deal look like programmatically? Does it look like 4 line items attacking audiences? Not in 2022. In 2022, I think it looks like 17 different PMP deals. And maybe an open auction one, couple contextual ones, but a lot more of these PMP deals. And that's where, and the trade desk is the publicly traded one that everybody can see all their numbers. But all the buy side platforms, this is getting a little interesting because these platforms built incredibly complex systems to handle seeing the ability to bid on every single auction across billions of opportunities an hour. They are unbelievably complex systems. An unbelievably complex system is going to cost you a little bit more to use. Makes sense. Planes cost over $1 million a piece. There's a lot of parts in a plane. DSP, to organize every ad that I could buy and bid on every single one and orchestrate all that, that's expensive.
Yeah.
But are you telling me that my entire buy-side stack could just be 25 PMPs now? You don't need that decision-making capability. You need what's called an ad server. Okay? So now we have this interesting vacuum of this cookie thing that really its core Because if you don't have to run an auction for every single ad, and you could just, it's just Hulu like giving it to you when you want. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. That's all we have to do. That piece of tech's going to be a lot cheaper than the big ones.
Keith, you're connecting so many dots right now. It's because this is, again, going back to our cycle conversation. This is what happened to SSPs in 2014. This is, they went from, they said they had AI, but they really just had 10,000 people in like India doing it. But like all of the like very, the advanced yield stuff they were doing for publishers is what the Trade Desk and MediaMath, and I don't know for sure, but all of them say they're doing for their buyers. Now, what happens when that goes away?
Hey, look,
and what we're seeing from Rubicons and Indexes and AppNexuses, what that means is they become a commodity, and you gotta get your costs down. You better figure out your unique value proposition.
I think to throw this in there with the ad server piece, though, Keith, like where we're going to, right? I mean, here's a piece where nobody's thought about because the ad server became so dumb, over time, right? Like, when is the time for a smart ad server that can communicate from
lowercase
supply?
S.
Yeah, well, right. And that's the, it sounds silly, but some of these ad servers, not that many modifications could probably make it a PMP management tool. And a PMP management tool in 2022, I mean, I think we're looking at contracts. We're looking at single-digit contracts. We're looking at like.
I mean, not to tip my own hand too much, but that's already what we work on. I think there are many publishers that have realized that their ad server does not do enough for them, and they have to have a middle layer of code between the page and the ad server to tell this dumb ad server what is actually more important.
But you could orchestrate the whole thing through pre-bid, probably. The buy side.
I think pre-bid's working on that.
Yeah, but again, what's fun about business is when it's not like the big guys are going to be like, well, we better make this much cheaper. That's not those words don't come out of many people's mouths. What you get is innovation. And you're going to see these. What you get is innovation. What you're going to get is like all of a sudden some buy side platforms will be like, we didn't build the remarketing thing. It's only PMP management. 3 points. 3 points for it. How about them apples?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, 5-cent ad serving fee. There's going to be models where you're like, that's a big one. And ironically, by the way, the SSPs, if they pull it off correctly, could still be in charge of the PMP management. But I don't need some giant piece of brilliant technology to manage the
That's a good point.
Marketing.
It's a good point. People who've had
I would love this conversation to keep going. We have already gone well beyond what I'm comfortable
I got my
with
kids screaming in the background.
We all do. There we go.
Let's do it again sometime.
This has been a fascinating conversation.
All right, KG, thanks for hanging out with us, man.
Thank you for dealing with the technical issues, which still actually worked. It all worked. We're good.
You guys are sweet, and it's great, and I appreciate it, and thank you for listening to me blather for a while, and thank you for the kind words.
Shotgun a Labatt for me.
I will.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right.